In one of the stranger coaching transitions in modern college football history, Manny Diaz's location has gone from South Beach to Philadelphia and back to South Florida in about 10 or 11 days. Mark Richt has retired Manny Diaz, obviously the new head coach at the University of Miami, and there was not much of a search. They knew who they wanted, and they went after their man, and they made that transition happen in less than 1 day. To help us break down Mark Richt, more importantly, Manny Diaz, and what's going on going forward is Cam Underwood from State of the U. Cam, how you doing tonight?
Hey, man, I'm good. Good to be here and glad to be here and everything. Happy New Year to everybody. If you can hear, I'm fighting a South Florida winter cold, head cold. So unfortunately, I'm a little nasal, but otherwise I feel good. And I also feel good about the transition to Manny Diaz and the future of the Miami Hurricanes program.
So, Cam, I really want to focus on Manny Diaz and what's going to happen going forward, because that's the important part of this. I do, though, would like you to give whatever insight you have into why you think Mark Richt made the decision that he did.
That's a great question, and that's a good place to start. The Miami Hurricanes offense was atrocious this year, and it was clearly broken. It helped to break the locker room because there was the requisite strife between offensive and defensive players. And John Garvin, star sophomore defensive end, he mentioned it after the bowl game. He said defensive players have to stop playing, the victim role, because we're doing what we're doing. And the animosity is understandable. Like, we're out here busting our ass. We're locking people down. We have quite possibly a championship caliber defense. And I know people are like, oh, the stats were inflated against bad teams. We didn't have a tough schedule this year, but defense did the job and didn't get any support from the offensive side of the ball. And at a certain point, you're going to get fed up with that. Like, yo, we're doing our stuff. Why are you not doing yours? And that happened. Like, the players have said that. We were speculating in and, heard reports about that throughout the year, sources and all these different kind of things, depending on, who you are and like who you know and can speak to. But that unequivocally happened. When you have players, plural, coming out after the bowl game speaking about it, that was what happened. And so then Blake James came out with his statement the night of the bowl game saying, basically changes need to be made. And we are fully invested in making those changes. And I'm invested in Mark Richt being here to help make those changes, which basically was schematically and personnel-wise in the coaching staff. The offense needed to be updated and the coaching staff needed to be updated, which puts Mark Richt in the uncomfortable position of needing to fire his son. That just was what it was. He was not getting the job done. He probably should not have gotten a job in Miami at 25 to be quarterback's coach anyway, because he wasn't a championship quarterback who had a career-ending injury and just said, I can't play anymore, but I'm, prime Troy Aikman, and then I'm here coaching. That wasn't John Richt. And basically, it just came down to the point of Mark Richt not wanting to do what needed to get done. He wasn't invested in it. He wasn't, Miami gave him the keys to the kingdom, Mark Richt, when he came in. You want to call plays again for the first time in a long time? Here. You want full control of it? Here. You got it, because we want you here. But then when the rubber met the road this offseason, and like some of my SB Nation colleagues, Bill Connolly, Alex Kirshner, even Bud Elliott, have all written about how this offseason was going to be the most crucial in Mark Richt's entire coaching career. How Miami had to unrichtify the offense, and that meant no more Mark Richt calling plays. That means no more John Richt on staff. That means going in other directions. That means not relying on the plays that have worked for 30 years because, yeah, they've worked. Well, inside dive isn't working right now, Mark. So we need something new. And it just came to the point of Mark Richt did not want to do what it was, and he didn't want to put in the effort needed to make the changes that are required. And when you're 58, 59 years old, you've been head coaching for 20 years almost. You've been in coaching for 30-something years. Maybe it's time to retire, and it just came down to that. And, he gracefully bowed out and didn't have to fire his son. He didn't have to have that conversation, call him over to the office or to the house. Hey, John, didn't go the right way. I love you. Seek shelter elsewhere. Here's the number of a guy. I got a job for you. I've been coaching for 30 years. And I spoke about this, how John Richt needed to be promoted out, how you need to lean on those 30 years of relationships to get him a job somewhere else and save yourself. And I just don't think that he had it in him. And I understand. Like, I get it. It's a different type of thing, but I was a teacher and I ran a program, ran a choir program for 15 years. And there's a level of connection that you have to have. And my first 2 jobs were building programs from the ground up, i.e. there had not been choir programs in a long time. And trust me, this is going to go back and relate to things with sports. I know people are like, why are you talking about music? We don't sing choir. I know, just bear with me. There's a parallel, I promise. When I was 23 years old and straight out of the University of Miami, I had all the energy in the world to put into that program, to be there all the time, to set the structure and the pedagogy, to, recruit singers, to, do the lessons, to go to these performances, to do to get everything where it needed to be, to get in the extra help, to put all the time into the program to get it to where it could go. I had that personal time and energy and the desire to do that. As I went through my career, if I'm now at 37 years old, tasked with that heavy lifting that I had at 23 from the ground up. And I mean, they had not had choir for 5 years at the school that I worked at. So there was I'm not following anybody else. No, none of the kids had any classical or, musical training. None of that was there. So anything that they had, I had to provide the structure and the scaffolding and things like that. There was a time that I was here for that. Now is not that time. So the parallel analogy is then for Mark Richt. There was a time early in his career when all those things that were required of him, he would have been there for. Because I'm 38 years old and I'm a first-year coach. And okay, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And I'm going to look at all these different things. I'm going to go to the ACFA or FCA conference. I'm going to blah, 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 blah. But now at almost 60, nah, man, I'm not going to do all that. Because now I got to do that. Nah, I'm not here for that anymore. I paid my dues. I did my time. I was in those trenches. And that's the 360 view from my point of view on what led Mark Richt to just say, you know what, as opposed to going and doing a professional engagement that I'm not fully invested in, I'm just going to step away and wish the University of Miami, my alma mater, well. And hopefully you guys, will take things to the next level moving forward.
I think a little bit too much in regards to these coaching situations, especially when it's somebody who is not a great all-time coach, but certainly has a legacy and has been very successful about metrics and legacy. And I just can't imagine that with all the resources, the recruiting base, everything going for him, that just went sour in about 12 months, that he wouldn't just, I know that the situation with his son would have been difficult, that he wouldn't have made those accommodations with the offense and done all those things, because what is he going to be remembered for long-term, whether it be at Georgia or Miami, are going to be winning percentage and championships. And if I could make the corrections and be a great Miami coach for 3 to 5 years and, compete for national titles, win ACC titles, and then step away. And I would think like that. And I would think, as you mentioned, he could still put his son in a good place elsewhere. And it could be a good teaching moment, actually. But everybody has their different motivations, and he didn't do anything wrong. Certainly, just a different thought process, and you can't reach his level of success without being ultra competitive. But maybe he's not the ultra alpha dog that is going to take it to the nth degree. He had other priorities, and that's good for him. So my next question, this doesn't matter now that Manny Diaz is the head coach, but I'm just curious, once you got that news, what names were rummaging through your head as to your wish list?
For head coaching?
For head coaching.
I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you. And people saw this, I was at brunch. Like, it was my buddy, or we were celebrating my buddy's birthday. And so I took a break because my phone was going crazy. People texting me, DMing me, and just Twitter. So I looked at the table in between mimosas and I tweeted it out. I was like, yo, I go to brunch for one day and Mark Richt retires. And honestly, I just put my phone down and I was trying to really be invested in the moment. Manny Diaz's name, however, did flash across my brain, because Obviously, he did yeoman's work here as defensive coordinator and is a Miami guy. Like, his father was mayor of Miami-Dade County, if you did not know that. His grandmother immigrated from Cuba with 10 cents in her pocket. Manny Navarro from The Athletic wrote a wonderful, wonderful piece connecting the family connection to the city of Miami and the University of Miami today. So I really urge you to go read that. But yeah, Manny Diaz was a name that came across my brain. And then I was just kind of thinking, like, where else, could we go? Dana Holgerson's name popped in because it was rumored that he was going to leave from West Virginia, but it looks like he's going to Houston, where he previously coached. Yeah, and that was really as far as I got, because then, like I said, I was trying to not necessarily think too much about sports, but just, hang out with my friends. But yeah, that was kind of where my brain started. But the main thing for me was even thinking about where Miami was going to go in terms of offensive coaching, because I thought that was more eminently impactful, I guess, than the head coach. But even though those do go together, because the head coach hires, the assistants.
Cam Underwood on the line, State of the U. Mark Richt retires. Manny Diaz gets the job about 12 hours later, which leads me to my next question, in letting us kind of go down that timeline of actually how this transpired on that particular day.
Yeah, hold on. I'm reading something on Twitter real quick. I heard your question.
I'm taping anyway.
No. You're good.
No, I'm not.
I just wanted to be sure that
we're not live anyway.
All right. So the timeline was pretty interesting, and it was pretty quick. So Sunday basically went like this. Mark Richt woke up, had a conversation with his wife, decided he was going to retire. Called athletic director Blake James, gave him that news, submitted his official resignation. Blake James then called university president Julio Frank to let him know about that, but then also say, this is what I was thinking, because you always, as an athletic director, need to have a couple names in your pocket in case that something happens, just in case that anything happens. So he was like, okay, cool. Manny Diaz is a name that we're thinking of. Should I contact him, preliminary, I think I want to move on this now. And this is Sunday, by the way. So then Blake James texted Manny Diaz to see if he was still in town in Miami, which he was, and he said, hey, would you like to have a meet together nowish, like in the mid-afternoon. So the press release came out from Miami Athletics at 12:47, I want to say, that Mark Richt had retired. Because I was sitting at brunch starting at 12, so that's about right. And then they had Diaz and Blake James, the athletic director, had their meeting sometime in that 1 o'clock hour. Then Blake James left from there. He had a press conference at 3:30, did that, left from there, spoke to the board of trustees and to President Frank, said, after this preliminary conversation, Manny Diaz did say that he would like to be considered for this position. So I would like to move forward with that. What can we do? Find the legalese on his contract, talk about the buyout, whatever. They did that for a while. And then at 10:47 or 10:57 p.m., Manny Diaz was named coach. And after the meeting with the board of trustees and president, then Blake James and Manny Diaz had a second meeting. And at that second meeting, that's when he was offered and accepted the job. They worked that out. And then at 10:57, the press release came out that Manny Diaz was named or had accepted the position as head coach. So within basically 10 hours, we went from having Mark Richt as head coach to having Manny Diaz as head coach with, all those kind of meetings and things. So it was a very whirlwind thing, and Blake James today, the athletic director, at the introductory press conference, said that Manny Diaz was the first and only choice. Boom. So, sometimes you know where you want to go with things. And there have been other coaches promoted that worked out really well in other situations in other places. Obviously Jimbo Fisher, when he was promoted from OC to head coach at Florida State, did very well, won a championship. Lincoln Riley being promoted out of Oklahoma worked very well. There's other places and other instances where things like that have worked. There's also other instances and places where things did not work. However, you cannot be scared of your convictions. If you really believe and have a set of criterion and you think, okay, this person fits these criterion, this is the person. This is the person. If it's the first choice or the 10th choice, it doesn't matter if you're right. And Blake James apparently has that very clear. belief in Manny Diaz. He was the first and only choice for this job. He is the person to lead the University of Miami football team program forward at this current time, and he acted on that belief.
We're discussing Miami football after a 7-6 campaign, but that is long past in the rearview mirror following the retirement of Mark Richt. And
well, I'm gonna stop you right there, actually, because Manny Diaz said, yeah, I am.
Okay.
Because Manny Diaz today at his press conference said everybody in the building has to own 7-6. Miami was 7-6. You know, it's the old thing. Bill Parcells, you are who your record says you are. You know what I mean? So, like, did Miami come in with a 8th ranked, slot coming in the preseason? Yes, Miami did not live up to that. So it's in the rearview mirror, but it's still present. Like, we have to lean into it and own it. Not saying we want to repeat that, but you cannot just say, oh, well, that was a no. That's the current state of affairs, because Miami does not play another game until August 31st against the University of Florida, 3 hours up the road from me in Orlando. So this whole 239 or 240 days from now till then, the University of Miami is still 7-6. So all of the work has to be that. All of the wind sprints, all of the squats, all the bench presses, all the curls, all of the drill, everything has to be fueled by that. You can't run away from that or anything. So no. It's in the rearview mirror, but it's still right. It's like the T-Rex from Jurassic Park. Things or items might be closer than they appear, because it's still right there, bro. And then, so until we forge a path forward, 7-6 is right on the front of everybody's brain, and it has to be.
All right. I'll restate my intro into the next section of our conversation. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, with Cam Underwood from State of the U. 7-6 in the back seat, the rearview mirror, but closer than the objects appear to be. Okay, so Manny Diaz is the guy, and without scanning the country, as you started to do with the likes of Jimbo Fisher and Lincoln Riley and their situations at Florida State and Oklahoma, respectively, my thought was, well, you go get the big name guy. But actually, the top programs in the country most recently have not gone out and gotten the big name guy. Kirby Smart, coordinator, on to head coach at Georgia. Lincoln Riley. Ryan Day at Ohio State. We'll see how he does, but never a head coach. Clay Helton, USC, and others. So this is a growing trend around college football. Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee. They didn't go get a head coach who had been successful anywhere. We're talking top programs who are trusting coordinators that they really like as younger guys with the energy that you talked about a few minutes ago to lead the program going forward.
Yeah, and I mean, like, legends aren't going to be there forever. You know what I mean? Like, Bobby Bowden retired. You know, pause. Sorry.
What's going on over there? You guys have your invaders down there. We have our different invaders up here.
Woo! I'm sorry. Say that again.
I said you have your invaders.
Yeah, man.
You know, down there. We do as well. But like, I had a bear crawling around in my backyard the other day.
Yikes!
So,
I just had a cucaracha who got through the frame of the window or something. So wanted to get that. Yeah. So. The question.
So the question was basically, you would think a big time program goes out and gets a finished product, a guy that's proven himself, but we see all over the place where that's not the case.
Right. It's not the case. And the thing is, those resources are limited, and those guys aren't going to be around forever, because even guys in the recent past who were those legendary coaches aren't even coaching anymore. Urban Meyer, not coaching anymore. Bob Stoops, who won millions of games at Oklahoma, not coaching anymore. You know, Steve Spurrier, Chip Kelly got fired twice or whatever, and then now he's back, but then UCLA was trash this year. So, I mean, even he was once one of those guys and is not necessarily right now. So, and, if the resources are limited, then you have to go somewhere else. You have to kind of go with the market. So, like, you're not going to hire Nick Saban away from Alabama. Sorry, that's not going to happen. You're not going to hire Urban Meyer away. You're not going to hire, a lot of these guys away from where they are, but there have to be the next generation. There have to be innovative, enthusiastic people who, like, of pedigree and caliber, to step up. And that's really where people are going and looking for, to be that team that gets a Jimmy Johnson, who was Oklahoma State coach or like a defensive coordinator, and then get him and groom him and have him become their legendary coach before he goes on somewhere else. So yeah, that's really been a trend. And I mean, I think that's good because I think that new individuals do need chances. And you can retread people as much as you want, and even Miami saw this with Mark Richt, retreading him from Georgia, and he got Georgia-esque results, a 9-win, a 10-win, and a 7-win season over 3 years. Okay, fine. You average, 8.5, 9 wins a year. Like, that's fine. But if you look back to his time at Georgia, it's pretty similar to that. So, I mean, you can retread people and hope that they change their stripes, or you can go in a new direction and try to see if that is the synergy that will really propel you forward. So, I think that trying something new is a good thing, and a lot of schools agree with me.
So is there anything specific about Manny Diaz that makes you hopeful that this is the right fit, he's the right guy?
Yeah, I mean, his connection to the city of Miami and the culture and the vibe of Miami. Obviously, you saw him completely revamp Miami's defense from a passive, overpowered, underwhelming group to one of the most dominant forces in college football. The turnover chain was his brainchild and things like that. And it was not the first sideline prop, but I still will hang my hat on it being the best, the most iconic. I mean, they're not doing, Burger King's not doing Whopper shoulder pads on a commercial, but they'll do a Whopper chain. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. So he really connects with that vibe and everything. And, he's a lifelong Miami Hurricanes fan. He talked about it today at his introductory presser. He was 9 years old and stayed up past his bedtime to see the University of Miami win our first national championship back 30 years ago today, or 35, years ago today, January 2nd, 1984. So he was like, yeah, I'm, a Cuban-American kid in Miami staying up past my bedtime. So that connection right there. And, just having that us against the world attacking mentality, not sitting on laurels, not anything. I mean, not even for defense. And look, I think that Manny Diaz last year should have won the Broyles Award, the 2008-17 season. I think he should have won the Broyles Award for the nation's best assistant coach, period, full stop. And that's the kind of performance he's had. If you look at the numbers and statistics and what he's done as the defensive coordinator, he's not even resting on those. He said nobody here has any status. So when we come back, all of the players after winter break next week, no one has any status. So Shaq Quarterman and Michael Pinckney, who are coming back for their senior years, which is a huge win for Miami, have no status. Now, do I fully expect those guys to earn it and be first team all ACC? Yes, because I think that they're better players and they know the system and things like that. But they don't come in with that. You got to go to practice. You got to do the offseason program. You got to prove to me that you have that. Same thing on offense. And the thing that's interesting, and I was having a conversation with a friend of mine earlier today, Manny Diaz's success at the University of Miami is going to be determined by his offense, which is crazy to say for a defensive coordinator and a defensive guru, obviously aside from the Texas 2-year kind of cratering, things like that. But he leans into that. And just the mentality of Manny Diaz saying, we want to create problems for opposing defenses. So I know what creates problems for my defense, and I want to do that. I want to push the vanguard. And he was asked directly about running a spread, and he said, you know what, teams spread the field all the time, and that word is, I think, overused, but I want to be dynamic. I want to be high intensity. I want to, be physical. I want to do all these things. And there's many different interactions. There's a run-based spread. Who's a run-based spread? I can't think of one right now. Help me out. Run-based spread offense. Oklahoma?
I think Ohio State used to be.
State? Yeah, Haskins. Yeah. Right. Okay. So State, they run a run-based spread. I mean, Florida, when Tebow was there, they had a power spread. They're running the ball. And I mean, obviously you have a 240-pound fullback or tight end playing quarterback. So yeah, duh. But I mean, Mississippi State, they have a power spread, versus Texas Tech, which is air raid spread. And they're trying to throw it, 80 or Wazoo, Washington State. They're trying to throw it 90 times a game and have some kind of running game in there, sure, but really use the short passes and things like that to supplement the run game. Both of those are spreads. Both of those can be effective. But, Manny Diaz said he wants to, the way that you really get defenses off kilter is by making defenders make choices, making them think, giving them conflict. Like, am I supposed to carry this crosser, or do I stay here because there's a flat guy, or do I go up the seam, or do I, like, those kind of things? And I'm really interested to see how that manifests itself, obviously by who he hires as offensive coordinator and the scheme that is employed moving forward. So all of that is to say, I just think that Manny Diaz has a different overall mentality, and we've seen that bear itself out on defense. And I know that the Solid Verbal guys, Dan and Ty, they do their podcast, and they talk about the every year when you have a new defensive coordinator, people talk about, oh, you're just going to fly to the ball, you're going to be physical, you're going to do these things. Manny Diaz didn't just say that. Miami has embodied that for 3 years. So for him to say, we want to do what we did on defense, but just on the other side, we still want to be physical. We want to be fast. We want to be intense. We want to do all these things that we said over here on D, on O also. I believe him at his word, and I believe he's going to bring in the people to be successful with that. And that, I think, more than anything, that change of mentality. Not we're just going to get it done. We're going to recruit great players and kind of let them go do stuff. We're going to scheme and plan to be dynamic. And that's what I want to see.
So since I am chopping this up, I got about 2 minutes. So you can take on either one of these. I don't know if they apply. Are there names out there for the offensive coordinator job? And then, well, we can talk expectations for 2019 another time. So basically, are there offensive coordinator names being floated out there?
For the offensive coordinator for the University of Miami, excuse me, I'm just in an old habit there. Manny Diaz said that there are 3 finalists today at his press conference, and he said that, if one of those 3 is not the guy, the number 4, if he chose or wanted to choose him, would be a wonderful choice. He would be a great fit. The names that have been bandied about so far were former North Carolina head coach Larry Fedora was the first name over the weekend that was lobbed out there as Manny Diaz wanting or being connected to. The second name was former Houston head coach and former Texas offensive coordinator Major Applewhite, former Texas quarterback also, as being another name out there. Have not heard a credible name for number 3. I've heard a couple different options, but I'm not going to say what those are just because I don't feel comfortable, and I don't necessarily believe one of them either. But Major Applewhite and Larry Fedora are widely thought to be 2 of the 3 finalists for the offensive coordinator spot. So obviously both of those guys having run offenses that put up a lot of yards and points, obviously a lot of spread basis to those offenses. Larry Fedora in his time at North Carolina, they were more run-based. At some times, they were more pass-based at some times, obviously depending on the personnel on the team. Major Applewhite, same thing. They want to have a lot of QB run in his offenses. Actually, both of them as well. So adding the QB run, that's another addition that I think that Miami should have at the quarterback position. Not necessarily saying everybody's going to run all the time, but I don't think that you can have a Brad Kaya who never runs until his final game in college. So those are the names that are out there, Larry Fedora and Major Applewhite, and a third mystery candidate. And I think that, either way, any way that Miami goes could be good, but also the assistants, the position coaches on offense that fill out the rest of that staff, they do matter as well. And hopefully, some of the rusty, dusty, trusty names do come through for that. But, apart from anything else, those guys will have to coach on the field. But I need some ace recruiters on offense. I really honestly do. And I think that's really where Miami is going to see an upgrade come, and hopefully that upgrade comes quickly.
It's a fresh new era of Miami football, sooner than expected. Mark Richt finishing up at 26-13 in 3 years. Manny Diaz will be the head coach for 2019 and is hard at work recruiting and hiring an offensive coaching staff. Cam Underwood, State of the U. Please join him, and I will let you close, Cam, to let us know what you have available there at the State of the U in the aftermath of this hiring.
There we go. Sorry, I muted my microphone. Yeah, no, we just have a lot of coverage. So, we're going to recap today's presser with Manny Diaz. Look forward to, where his offensive coaching staff, including offensive coordinator, might go. Obviously, I'm still digging in with recruiting. I got to finish some stuff from the early signing day, and then obviously look forward to finishing this class. But really, looking forward to 2020 and 21, because I think that's where you're going to see a bump maybe in Miami's recruiting with a new staff and a new scheme and things like that. Plus, the fact we have basketball coverage and a lot of other commentary and analysis as well. So, please come on by, State of the U. We have a lot of stuff for you guys. So, just rock with us.
Which is great to hear what Cam and the staff have available to read. But Cam, as you know, I tell you this all the time, not to give you a big head, but people ask for you. So I got to track you down to get the take on the latest.
Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate it. So, even though I'm playing a little sick tonight with this head cold, it's always good to be here. So I'll see you guys next time.
All right, good stuff.